So now this painting, as I've said before, is going to be a lot looser. It has nothing to do with perspective. Hopefully you've learned the lessons that I've had to teach you with perspective. So here I've just drawn some koi fish, and just like before, you can see, if you look really closely, that there's a lot of underdrawing here, just a lot of scribbling going on, right, where I was kind of just working out my designs. And did I look at koi fish? Yeah, I looked at some koi fish on the internet, but it's my own drawing, and I think that that's really important to do your own original. Well, this drawing paper that we're using for our watercolor is thin enough that when I put that heavy Sharpie on here and I put this over it, that I can see through to it. And so this time, instead of drawing really heavy lines like I've done with the other watercolors with the perspective, I'm going to do this more like, well, an actual watercolor painting. In other words, I'm going to draw very lightly. Okay, so you can kind of see the fish now, right? Take one last peek. There they are. Because when I draw light now, you're probably not going to see them. Okay, cool. So here we go. I've got my fish. It's all good. And here we go. I'm using a regular old number 2HB pencil for this. And one of these days, maybe I'll do a tutorial on the different types of pencils. But that day is not today. And so for now, just know that they do have harder pencils, and the harder pencil is going to show less. Okay, so I've got my image transferred. So I'm going to go ahead and take this paper out and tape this on. So here we go. We've got this all taped down, and just wash this down. Nice clean brush, and just everywhere. But I'm not soaking the paper out totally. I made a nice little puddle right here, and my blue, it's nice and clean right here. Started around the edges because that's where the darkest part was, and then worked in towards my fish, right? And when I did the fish, you can see that I've got them right up to, in fact, into the bodies of the fish, right? All along the edges. I haven't left what I refer to as the magical white line. So when I say the magic white line, maybe you're confused and you don't know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, so for instance, if you were to look like, let's say over here, you can see the line of the fin drawn right here. And what the students would do is that instead of going all the way up to it, they would come up and, just get kind of close-ish to where it's at, thus leaving this sort of magical lighter area around it, usually white, right? It's usually the white of the paper, so that's the magic white line. And we'd want to avoid that. Okay, time to loosen up a little bit. And so you can see I keep adding paint to that because I want the color to be a little bit more intense now. So, of course, I'm going to use more paint, less water, right? And you can see it's getting a little bit darker. And where am I doing it? I'm doing it mostly around the edges. Am I being super careful? No, in fact, I'm being like purposefully messy. Am I avoiding the fish? No, here, bam, there's a fish, right? Get it right in there. It does not matter. I don't want the magic white line. So you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to work into another compatible color here. I'm going to work into purple. Now, this watercolor set has purple, and I could use red, but I think for my purposes here, using that secondary color that comes with the watercolor, why not, right? And I'll go ahead and I'll use the purple that came with it. See, because sometimes when you mix a purple using the blue and the red, especially the blue and the red that comes with a set like this, you'll get a very dark purple. And maybe I don't want it to be that dark. Okay, so here we go. Ooh, just look at that. It's doing its watercolory thing now as that purple just sort of goes wherever the heck it wants to. I mean, I kind of place it, but then it just spreads and has a little mind of its own. And that's cool. That's exactly what I want it to do. And am I going to put that purple everywhere? No, just some places. So another color that goes really well with blue is, of course, green, right? Because with the purple, it was red and blue, that would make purple, even though we use the purple out of the thing. And in here, it'd be yellow and blue, that would make the green, right? And so with a nice clean brush, a new area, and this green is, pretty fakey. If I was doing trees, I probably would not use this green, right? But for here, and the fact that it's going to mix with this blue, then it's like, it could be kind of cool. And so let's just see what happens, just to add a little bit more interest. Think about it. I know, I know kids, right? And they would just go ahead and they would just do blue, because blue's blue, water's blue, and then that's that, right? But this is an art class, right? So do it up a little bit and make things a little bit more interesting. Before we let this totally dry, I am going to work into it a little bit, because what's going to happen is as I work into these fish, it is going to blur a little bit, blend a little bit with what I've got going on here. I think that's going to be cool though, because it's going to add a little bit more life to what I'm doing. Now the fish is a form, right? So I think what I'll do is I'll think about, well, where's the light coming in? I'm going to have the light mostly coming in from the top. So if I get it a little bit darker towards the bottom, that will be okay. Anyway, so there it is. That's what I wanted. I wanted sort of a nice, soft, blurry edge to that fish, but it's also starting to define it a little bit. Okay, so rinsing that off, and let's go for it. So this is going to be the orange one. This is going to be quite the contrast. And the orange, that's a special warm, cool color combination. We've talked about primaries a little bit, and in the next lessons, we're gonna get to this whole color thing for real, right? But right now, we're just, we're dipping our toes in a little bit, getting a little bit wet, and learning a little bit. So, like for last time, we talked about primaries, and we talked about complementary colors a little bit when I was doing the other paintings, the harmonious colors. So in other words, we had the primaries, red, yellow, and blue. We had the harmonious colors, so when things were next to each other on the color wheel. So in other words, we could take and make a purple, which would be next to a blue or a red. Those could also be considered your secondaries there. All right. And then when we went to making browns, we used complementary colors. All right. It's a little bit. Once again, I'll do that very formally in the lessons that are coming up. But for right now, just know that there are special color combinations that you can do. And one of them is a warm cool. And that's what we're doing here, really, is we're using these warm colors to sort of contrast, not complement. When I say complement a color, that's a really specific term. That's talking about colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. But to complement each other, I guess. In other words, something that's just going to work well together. It's going to be bold and striking. And cool. That is about what I wanted to have happen here. Maybe a little bit more. I want that to blend into this blue here. So a little bit more there. A little bit more there. Anywhere else. A little bit more on this edge here. And here. And you see how that's blending? See, that's the watercolor. That's my relationship, like coming out there, knowing what it's going to do. And that is, I think, pretty much what I want it to do. Maybe a little bit more here. See, I'm also starting to build form. You see how I've got this darker here, a little darker here. So, there's a little bit of randomness to it. I'm trying to keep things fresh. But there's also a little bit of that form taken over. Okay. Now that, I think, is enough. Okay. So now I am going to let it dry. And I'm going to show you a wet in wet watercolor technique next.